Welcome back to Close Up. The Republican nominee in the 1st District beat out a large and competitive field in the GOP primary, including the 2020 nominee. But now she faces an even bigger test in Congressman Chris Pappas. We sat down with Caroline Leavitt at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. Caroline Leavitt, you meet a CD1 voter on the street and you've got 1 minute to convince them to vote for you. What do you say?
Well, I have been doing that, and what I've been saying to them is, are you better off today than you were 2 years ago when Chris Pappas took office and Joe Biden walked into the White House for the first time? And the answer always unequivocally is no. We have skyrocketing energy costs in this state right now. Electric bills 4 times as high as they were last year. It's completely unaffordable for families right now to fill up their home heating oil tanks. Inflation is stuck at 8.2%. These are direct consequences of the Biden, Pelosi, and Chris Pappas agenda. And that's why I'm running, to bring a new generation of leadership to Washington and to change the direction of this country. We literally cannot afford another 2 years of Chris Pappas. I will fight to bring the conservative values, fiscally conservative values that make New Hampshire a wonderful state at the state and local level to our federal delegation in Washington, D.C.
A big selling point for you in the primary was your service in the White House working for President Donald Trump. Have you ever strongly disagreed with something Donald Trump has done, either when he was in office or out of office, and spoken up, really led the charge?
Well, sure. I mean, I worked in the president's White House press office, and so oftentimes we were dealt with defending some of the things that he had said or done, and it made it difficult because we were pushing forth policies that were really, really good for the American people. And so I agree with voters that sometimes President Trump's rhetoric wasn't always helpful to the cause, but the inconvenient truth for Chris Pappas and the Democrats is Donald Trump is not on the ballot this year. And I know they like to continually talk about him, but this election is a referendum on Joe Biden and the atrocities he's put us, we the people here in the Granite State, through over the past year. Again, with the skyrocketing inflation, the energy costs, people are literally choosing between heating and eating this winter. And so I vehemently disagree with the Biden-Pappas-Pelosi agenda, and that's why I decided to step up and run for Congress.
Can you provide a specific example, though, of when you've disagreed with President Trump?
Sure. There were often times when I was working in his White House as a spokeswoman when he said or did things that we did not agree with. But I was there to defend the policies of the administration that were certainly helping people here in New Hampshire.
On this program in January, you said you'd be open to filing legislation or working on legislation in Washington that would privatize Social Security for future generations while protecting those who've already paid into the system. Is that still your position today?
Yes. Let me be very, very clear on this, because Chris Pappas is being very disingenuous and trying to scare seniors, which I think is shameful. What I have said from the beginning consistently, as you noted, is I will always protect Social Security for those who have paid into the system, our elderly, our seniors who depend on those benefits, who have worked their whole lives for them. Absolutely. There's bipartisan consensus that that's a system we need to protect. Promises made, promises kept, and I stand by my word on that. However, I'm being mindful of elementary school-age children, grandchildren, and those much younger than me that have not entered the workforce yet. This program will be insolvent for them, and so Congress would be wise and responsible to look into solutions for it. Chris Pappas's solution, as admitted in our debate yesterday, is to endlessly raise taxes on the American people. The self-employed here in New Hampshire are already paying 12% payroll tax to keep up with the cost of Social Security. And so Congress would be very responsible and wise to think about the young Americans across this country who are essentially their futures are being mortgaged right now by Congress in the way that this system is run.
There are a few different ways to do privatization. Do you have a specific plan in mind?
There are certainly a number of solutions that are on the table. I know there have been various discussions by Republican and Democrat leaders in Washington, D.C., and I will look at all solutions to ensure a sustainable system for future generations of Americans.
You said you don't plan to vote for any abortion restrictions once you get to Washington, D.C. as a member of Congress, but there are Republicans who do plan to file legislation to do just that, and prior Republican Congresses have voted in favor of those bills. So it's entirely possible you could come under tremendous pressure as a Congresswoman to vote for those pieces of legislation. So how should voters react if you go to Washington and then you change your position and you end up voting your conscience and your values as someone who's pro-life?
Well, I have proven to be a really independent voice, one that is not beholden to anyone in Washington, D.C. We won our primary the New Hampshire way, taking funds and support from the people of New Hampshire, not Washington. In fact, they spent millions of dollars trying to defeat me. I'm not beholden to anyone in D.C., and I've made my my position to everyone down there very, very clear on this issue. More importantly to the voters, I will deliver on my promise, and I will not vote for a federal ban on abortion. This is an issue that should be left to our state, and I support that wholeheartedly.
Can you cite where in the Dobbs decision it says only the states can act on this?
Well, what the Dobbs decision did was it returned the power to the states, and it made clear that in our Constitution there is no right to an abortion, and so therefore it should be left to the states to decide. And when I go to Washington, D.C., it's my goal on not just this issue, but all issues, to get the federal government out of the way. We legislate really well here in New Hampshire with our active legislature. We have a great governor who's done great things for our state, and so I want to go to D.C. to reserve more power to the people, not more power to the bureaucrats in Washington.
Certainly, though, the decision does say its powers are reserved to the people and their representatives,
Correct.
Which technically could mean Congress as well. But moving on. So for many months, you referred to the 2020 election as being stolen from President Donald Trump. And the idea that Biden won more votes than him, you called it, quote, preposterous. And you slammed your opponent, Matt Mowers, when he said that Biden legitimately won more votes than Donald Trump. But in our recent Facebook Live interview, you called President Biden, quote, the legitimate president, which clearly seems to be at odds with your prior attacks. So did you change your position here, and did you misspeak?
No, I did not misspeak. The electors were certified for President Joe Biden on January 6th, and so therefore he is the president of the United States. He most certainly is. That's why I'm running for Congress, to fight against his agenda that is hurting our people here. I was up in Conway yesterday. I met with a business owner, Joyce. She owns a small business, family run, for decades now. She literally cannot survive 2 more years of the Chris Pappas and Joe Biden leadership that we are seeing. Her profit margins are minimizing every single day. She's suffering due to the skyrocketing inflation and energy costs and electric bills. She can't afford to keep her lights on this winter because of Joe Biden's policies, and that's exactly why I'm running, to bring a new generation of leadership and to stop the destruction that Joe Biden has wrought on this country over the past 2 years.
Not just the president, though. You called him the legitimate president after saying he was illegitimately elected. How does that make any sense?
I believe there was fraud in the 2020 election. I've been very, very clear on that, but the electors were certified for Joe Biden, and he's in the White House today.
The idea that you said it's time to look forward and time to move on, essentially. What you've alleged previously would amount to one of the greatest crimes in the history of the United States and a massive injustice. If you truly believed that this happened, why would you just shrug it off and say it's time to move on? More importantly, what does it tell voters that something that was so important to you, such a passionate point up until September 13th, is now just in the rearview mirror?
Well, that's not true. Respectfully, Adam, I've continued to stand strong for election integrity. I continue to talk about it with voters on the campaign trail every day. This is an issue of great concern, and I stand for election integrity at the state and local level. I want our representatives in Concord to pass measures to shore up our elections here in New Hampshire. What my Democrat opponent, Chris Pappas, wants to do, because he voted for it, is a bill called H.R. 1, which is literally a federal takeover of our election system here in New Hampshire. It would override every law that we have on the books. It would ensure D.C. controls our elections, not Concord. It would ensure that it's forbidden for states to implement voter ID and common sense election integrity reforms that make people have trust in their vote. That's what I stand for, and I'll continue to stand strong for that.
Last question on this. President Trump recently said, quote, I don't believe we'll ever have a fair election again. If he runs again in 2024 and you're in Congress and we have a similar outcome between Biden and Trump as we did the last time, where it's uncertain and people are calling it into question between the months of November and December, should voters expect that you will be working to make sure President Trump gets his outcome that he wants rather than whatever the states send to you?
That's a completely hypothetical question. President Trump is not on the ballot. We don't even know if he's running for president in 2024. I want everyone to run for president in 2024 because anyone would be better than Joe Biden. He is really hurting the people of the greatest state, and that's why I'm running for Congress, because people here literally cannot afford to heat their homes this winter. It's a direct result of his administration's agenda. We haven't even hit on in this interview the fentanyl crisis that is plaguing communities here in New Hampshire. Halloween is coming up, and there are fentanyl candy pills, multicolored candy pills in New England. This is a dangerous threat to families here in our state, and that's why I'm running, and that's why I want to be the next Congresswoman for this district, to bring fiscally conservative policies to Washington, to pass a balanced budget, to stop the spending, shut down the border, and stand for our law enforcement community.
So a hypothetical question, but one that's important because it happened before and it could happen again, and you want to just leave it open. That's something you could fight for.
I'm not going to comment on something that hasn't happened yet.
Okay. If new natural gas gas pipelines are proposed through the 1st District and you have constituents who prevail upon you to stop them, what are you going to do?
Well, certainly the Northern Pass did not pass. Voters made their position clear on that. However, I am open to all energy solutions. We need an all-above energy approach in this country, and we've seen the Democrats take a one lane on this issue. They have completely waged a war on our fossil fuel industry in the name of, renewables in the future, which that's unsustainable and it's not right for the people because they are paying higher gas rates than they ever have, higher home heating oil bills than they ever have. Electric rates in our state are through the roof because of the Democrats' energy policies. And so I support an all-above approach. That's nuclear, that's hydro, that is more pipelines in our country, and it's certainly tapping into the resources that we have here in the United States that allow us to be an energy independent nation. And Joe Biden and the Democrats right now are begging OPEC and our adversaries around the world to produce oil for the American people. That is a complete shameful dereliction of duty, and there's no need for it. So we need to unleash our domestic energy production on day one in January, and I will fight to do that because Granite Staters cannot suffer more of this energy policy from Joe Biden and Chris Pappas.
Karoline Leavitt, thank you so much for joining us on Close Up.
Thank you.